Whenever you scroll through Reddit through subreddits like r/RelationshipAdvice or /TrueOffMyChest, you'll eventually hit a post that makes your blood run cold. It's usually from a woman. She describes a life that sounds like a high-security prison, but she phrases it like she's talking about the weather. My husband doesn't like it when I wear red, so I stopped. He says my best friend is a bad influence, so we don't talk anymore. He manages all the bank accounts because he says I'm bad with numbers. And the comments section is always a battlefield of judgment. How do women end up with men like this? People ask. How did she not see the red flags? Why didn't she leave him ages ago? I used to be one of those commenters. I used to sit in my ivory tower of independence and think I was too smart to be hunted. But that was before I understood the physics of the boiling pot. See, the monster doesn't show up at the first date with a pitchfork. He shows up with a bouquet of flowers and a listening ear. This is how it actually happens. This is how the water starts to warm. The myth of the monster. In the beginning, he was the best thing that ever happened to me. That's the part the documentaries always skip. They show the bruises. They don't show the 3 months of perfection that come before. He wasn't a monster. He was a savior. He was the only person who truly saw me. He didn't start by telling me what to wear. He started by telling me how beautiful I looked in blue. So beautiful, in fact, that other men might get the wrong idea. It felt like a compliment. It felt like he was protective. It felt like love. We moved in together after 6 months. It felt fast, but it felt right. He told me he couldn't stand being away from me for a single night. He told me his life started the moment I walked through the door. At the time, I thought that was romantic. Now, I realize it was a boundary being erased. The first degree of heat. The temperature increases by a single degree. You don't feel it. It's lukewarm. It's comfortable. It starts not as a fight, but as a personal quirk. We were at a party, and I was laughing with a male coworker. On the drive home, he was quiet, not angry, just sad. When I asked him what was wrong, he sighed and said, I just felt a bit disrespected, honestly. The way you were leaning in when he talked. I know you didn't mean anything by it, but it hurt me. I thought we had something special. Look at the wording there. He didn't call me a name. He didn't yell. He made himself the victim. I felt a wave of guilt so heavy it made my stomach ache. I heard in my thought, my husband, the man who loves me more than anything, is hurting because of something I did. I apologized. I promised to be more mindful. I didn't see that I had just handed him a leash. I didn't realize that by moving on from it, I was actually training myself to be smaller. Everyone is a bit strange, right? Everyone has their insecurities. I told myself that compromising was just part of a serious relationship level, the anchor of commitment. Then came the marriage, or the pregnancy, or the mortgage, the lock. Abusers are master mathematicians. They know exactly when the cost of leaving becomes higher than the cost of staying. The moment that ring was on my finger, the lukewarm water began to simmer. Suddenly, his quirks became rules, but they were still wrapped in the language of care. I don't think you should take that promotion, honey. It's so much stress, and I want you to be happy. Why don't you work part-time? I'll take care of the bills. I want to provide for you. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Being taken care of. But what it actually was the removal of my exit strategy. Without a job, I had no money. Without money, I had no movement. Without movement, I was exactly where he wanted me, stationary in the pot. The subtle erosion. I remember standing in front of the mirror one morning, about a year into our marriage. I was wearing a dress I used to love, a bright floral sundress. I looked at it and felt a pang of anxiety, not because I didn't like it, but because I was already calculating his reaction. Will he think the neckline is too low? Will he say it's too much for a simple lunch? Is it worth the 2-day cold shoulder I'll get if he decides it's disrespectful? I took the dress off. I put on a gray sweater and jeans. I told myself I was just being a good wife. I told myself I was avoiding a silly argument. I didn't realize that the me from before, the girl who loved bright colors and loud laughter, was already starting to drown. The water was getting warmer. I was still a frog, and I was still smiling, convinced that the bath felt nice. I didn't know that the stove had been turned up another notch while I was sleeping. If you look at a map of a person's life, it's filled with bridges. Bridges to your parents, your childhood friends, your coworkers, and your hobbies. These bridges are what keep you grounded. They are your reality checks. If something goes wrong at home, you cross a bridge, talk to a friend, and they tell you, hey, that's not normal. The controller knows this. He knows that as long as those bridges exist, he doesn't have total power. So, he begins a campaign of subtle demolition. He doesn't blow the bridges up with dynamite. He lets them rot, one plank at a time. The us against the world narrative. It started with a slow poison dripped into my ear about the people I loved most. My sister was the first target. We were close. We talked every day. But suddenly, every time I hung up the phone with her, he would have a comment. Does she always talk about herself that much? I feel like she doesn't really listen to you, Sarah. It's a bit draining, don't you think? At first, I defended her. But then he would double down with concern. I'm just worried about you. You always seem so stressed after talking to her. I hate seeing you like that. I just want you to be at peace. See how brilliant that is? He wasn't attacking my sister. He was protecting my peace. He made my relationship with my own blood feel like a burden. Slowly, I started calling her less. I didn't want to deal with the debriefing session he would put me through afterward. It was easier to just stay quiet. This is the second stage of the boiling pot. The water is no longer lukewarm. It's steaming. But you've acclimated. You think, he's the only one who truly has my back. Everyone else is just drama. The sabotage of reality. Then came the disrespect trap. This is a classic move in the controller's handbook. Whenever I wanted to go out, say, for a quick coffee with an old college friend, he wouldn't forbid it. That would be too obvious. Instead, he would create a crisis. Right as I was putting on my coat, he would suddenly feel chest pains or become deeply depressed. Or he would pick a fight about something I did 3 weeks ago, dragging the argument out until I was too emotionally exhausted to leave. Go, have fun, he would say, his voice dripping with fake martyrdom. Don't worry about me. I'll just sit here and try to get through this. I didn't realize your coffee date was more important than our marriage, but I guess that's where we are. I would stay. Every single time, I would stay. I would take off my coat, apologize for being selfish, and spend the evening trying to make it up to him. I thought I was being a supportive partner. I didn't realize I was being trained like an animal to associate independence with pain. The stable family myth. For those of us who didn't come from perfectly stable families, this part is especially lethal. He knew my parents had their flaws. He used those flaws as weapons. Well, you don't have a real family, he whispered one night when I was crying about a disagreement with my mother. My family is your only actual family now. Why would you ever need to go back to see those people? They don't care about you. They don't really respect our relationship either. They just want to pull you down to their level. He became my judge, my jury, and my only source of truth. He convinced me that the world outside our front door was a predatory, cold place, and that he was the only warm hearth in existence. I stopped answering the door. I stopped answering the phone. My world, which used to be wide and colorful, had shrunk to the size of a 2-bedroom apartment. The identity theft. This is where it gets deep. This is where you lose yourself. When someone controls where you go, who you speak to, and what you do, your brain starts to perform a survival hack. To avoid the constant friction and the steam of the boiling pot, you start to anticipate his needs before he even speaks them. You stop thinking, what do I want for dinner? And start thinking, what can I make that won't make him angry? You stop thinking, I like this job, and start thinking, how can I quit without looking like it was his idea? Your identity isn't stolen in a night. It's eroded. You wake up one day and realize you don't have an opinion on music anymore. You don't have a favorite food anymore. You have become an extension of his will, a shadow, a ghost in your own home. You might notice the heat now. You might look at the water and see bubbles forming. You realize you're in pain. But when you look for the ladder, the support system, the money, the family, you realize he has pulled the ladder up. You're floating in a pot with no grip, and the steam is starting to fill your lungs. You realize, with a sudden, sharp terror, that he isn't who you thought he was. He never was. The man you loved was a mask. The man standing over the stove, turning the dial to high. That is the reality. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in a house ruled by a controller. It isn't the peaceful silence of a library. It's the heavy, suffocating silence that precedes a lightning strike. In this third stage of the boiling pot, the water is no longer just hot. It is beginning to scald. This is the stage where the control moves from your social life into your very biology. This is where you lose the right to your own body. If you are reading this and wondering, how could a woman let it get this far? Understand that by this point, the victim's brain is functioning in survival mode. When you're in a constant state of fight or flight, the part of your brain responsible for logic and long-term planning, the prefrontal cortex, effectively shuts down. You aren't thinking about 5 years from now. You are thinking about surviving the next 5 minutes. The biological siege, sleep, food, and breath. The most terrifying realization for a victim is when they notice that their basic human needs have become privileges granted by the controller. This is a common tactic found in the journals of survivors and in the research of experts like Lundy Bancroft. It starts with sleep deprivation. He won't hit you. Instead, he will wait until you have just fallen asleep, that deep, restorative REM sleep, and then he will wake you up to talk. He will claim he is upset or that you looked at him weird before bed. He will keep you awake until 4 a.m. with a circular argument that goes nowhere, looping over and over until you are so exhausted that you will agree to anything just to be allowed to close your eyes. Over months, this lack of sleep breaks your spirit. A sleep-deprived brain cannot fight back. A sleep-deprived brain cannot see the red flags. You become a shell, a zombie walking through your own life, perpetually exhausted and therefore perfectly compliant. Then comes the food and health control. Maybe he starts critiquing what you eat under the guise of health. Do you really need that second helping? I just want you to stay fit for me. Or perhaps he controls the grocery budget so tightly that you find yourself skipping meals so he can have the best portions. This isn't about money. It's about the fact that a hungry, physically weak person is easier to dominate than a strong one. The art of gaslighting, rewriting history. At this stage, the controller begins to rewrite your memories. This is gaslighting in its purest, most lethal form. You remember him screaming at you until you cried. He says, "I never raised my voice." You're being hysterical. You're always imagining things to make me look like the bad guy. You're the one who started it. You remember him promising that you could go see your mother for her birthday. He says, "I never said that. Why would I say that when you know we have bills to pay?" You're losing your grip on reality. "Sarah, maybe you should see a doctor. I'm the only one who puts up with your episodes." When the person you love most in the world, the person you share a bed with, tells you that your memories are false, you eventually start to believe them. You start to trust his version of reality more than your own eyes. This is the ultimate victory for the controller. Once he owns your truth, he owns your soul. You begin to think, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm lucky he stays with me. Though why does he do that? Realization. This is the point where we must look at the mind of the master. Many people think these men act this way because they are out of control or have anger issues. But as Lundy Bancroft explains in his pivotal work, why does he do that? It is actually the opposite. These men are in perfect control. Notice how he never loses his temper at his boss. Notice how he doesn't scream at the policeman who pulls him over. He only loses control with you. This proves that his behavior is a choice. He isn't angry. He is entitled. He believes, deep in his core, that he has the right to control you. He believes that your purpose in life is to serve his needs, to mirror his emotions, and to provide him with a perfect environment at the cost of your own existence. He doesn't do it because he is broken. He does it because it works. By making you feel small, he feels big. By making you feel crazy, he feels powerful. It is a calculated, systematic dismantling of a human being. The steam fills the lungs. You are now deep in the pot. The water level is low because the steam is thick. You try to speak, but your throat feels tight. You realize that you haven't had a conversation with a real friend in 2 years. You realize you don't have $20 to your name that he doesn't know about. You see the exit. You see the front door. But you don't move. Why? Because you are terrified that if you move, the water will splash, and he will turn the heat up even further. You have been conditioned to believe that any attempt at freedom will result in a punishment so severe that you won't survive it. But there's a tiny voice left, a small, flickering spark at the very back of your mind. It's the voice that led you to post that question on Reddit. It's the voice that is currently reading these words. It's the voice that says, "This is not love. This is a hostage situation." The most dangerous part of this stage is the hope trap. You keep waiting for the old him to come back, the guy from the first 3 months. You think, if I just cook better, if I just stay quieter, if I just love him harder, he'll go back to being that savior again. But here is the hard, cold truth. The savior never existed. He was just the bait. The man at the stove, he is the only version that is real. And he isn't going to turn the heat down. He is waiting for you to stop struggling entirely. If you're standing in the center of a burning house, the first thing you lose is your sense of direction. The smoke makes everything look the same. This is where many women find themselves after years of acclimatizing to the heat. They know they are dying, but they've forgotten where the door is. But here is the secret the controller doesn't want you to know. The heat that was meant to destroy you is the same energy you can use to break out. The transition from a victim to a survivor doesn't happen with a grand cinematic explosion. It happens in a moment of absolute, quiet clarity. It's the moment you realize that the pain of staying has finally become greater than the fear of leaving. The moment of clarity, the tiny voice. For many, this moment comes from a small glitch in the controller's mask. Maybe he says something so cruel about your child that a primal protective instinct wakes up. Maybe you see him treat someone else with kindness and realize he is capable of being decent. He just chooses not to be with you. Or maybe you read a post like this. Suddenly, the boiling frog metaphor clicks. You realize the water isn't just a personal quirk. It's a death trap. You look at the ladder he told you was gone, and you realize it was there the whole time. It was just covered in the shadows he cast. Opie, if you're reading this, I want you to listen to that tiny voice telling you that this is a bigger deal than it seems. That voice isn't paranoia. That voice isn't disrespect. That voice is your identity trying to crawl back from the grave. It is the part of you that existed before him, and it is the only part of you that can save you. The danger of the departure. We have to be honest here. Leaving is the most dangerous time in a controlling relationship. When a controller realizes they are losing their grip, they often turn the heat from high to explosive. This is why we tell women, do not announce your departure. You don't need to stand up for yourself in a way that puts you in physical danger. You don't need him to understand why you're leaving. He will never understand, because in his mind, he has done nothing wrong. To him, you're a piece of property that is malfunctioning. Leaving a controller is a tactical operation. It's about knowledge as power. Reading that book, Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. It's like getting the enemy's playbook. When you can predict his next move, he loses his power over you. The secret stash, rebuilding the bridges he burned. Calling that sister you haven't talked to in a year. Reaching out to that old friend. You'll be surprised how many people are just waiting for a signal to throw you that life ring. The paper trail, gathering your documents, your ID, your birth certificate. These are the keys to the world outside the pot. The identity reborn. What happens after you jump out of the pot? The water might be gone, but the burns remain. Survivors often describe a period of phantom control, where they still hear his voice in their head telling them they're stupid or that they can't survive without him. This is the post-separation phase. It is the hardest part of the recovery. But then, something beautiful happens. You start to choose your own clothes again. You realize that you can manage your own money. You eat when you're hungry and sleep when you're tired, and nobody wakes you up at 3 a.m. to tell you why you're a failure. You realize that the you he tried to erase wasn't actually gone. She was just hiding, waiting for it to be safe to come back out. You start to see colors in high definition again. You realize that the world isn't the cold, predatory place he described. It's a place of possibility. A final word to the person still in the pot. If you're reading this and your heart is racing because it sounded a little too much like your own living room, please know this. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And it is not your fault. You didn't let this happen. You were targeted because you are kind, because you were empathetic and because you believed in the best version of someone who didn't deserve you. He didn't pick you because you were weak. He picked you because you were a source of light he wanted to own. The water is hot. The steam is thick, but you're still alive. There's a world outside that kitchen. There are people who will love you without wanting to own you. There is a version of your life where you don't have to walk on eggshells. Knowledge is the first step. Power is the second. Freedom is the destination. Pick up the book. Call a friend. Listen to the tiny voice. It's time to jump.